Neural populations are famously noisy. Present the same stimulus twice to the same animal, and you get different neurons, different firing rates, different timing. Yet the animal identifies odors reliably, discriminates contrasts, and executes learned movements without stumbling. The variability is real, but so is the stability. For years, the dominant framework has focused on centroid preservation. The idea that while individual neurons shuffle their roles over days or weeks, the average population response to each condition stays locked in place. But this temporal framing leaves a fundamental question unanswered. A population's utility to downstream brain areas doesn't just depend on where the average state sits. It depends on whether the full relational structure among stimuli is consistent from one set of trials to the next. Today, we're looking at a property called geometric stability, and it's fundamentally reshaping how we think about representational reliability in the brain. The standard approach measures temporal stability through representational drift. That's been documented everywhere from hippocampus to motor cortex. But centroid preservation only tells you the average state is maintained. It says nothing about whether the pattern of pairwise distances between conditions is consistent across independent observations. You might ask whether decoding accuracy already captures this. It doesn't. Decoding asks whether task variables can be linearly read out from a population, which is a question about information content. Geometric stability asks whether the pairwise distance structure reproduces reliably across independent trial subsets, which is a question about representational architecture. In practice, these are empirically orthogonal. You can have a highly decodable population that is geometrically brittle, especially if information is compressed into a low-dimensional subspace. Linear readouts succeed, while split-half consistency fails. To measure this, we use a metric called Shesha. It quantifies geometric stability as the Spearman rank correlation between split-half representational dissimilarity matrices. Here's the exact procedure. You take your trial data, split it into odd and even sets, compute condition-averaged population vectors for each, and calculate a pairwise cosine distance matrix for both. Then you take the upper triangular vectors of those two matrices and compute their rank correlation. It's a data-to-data comparison of the full relational structure, operating entirely within a single session. Crucially, it's empirically dissociable from both centroid drift and decoding accuracy. When we applied Shesha to 229 area session observations across 68 brain regions during a visual discrimination task, we found a striking regional hierarchy. Striatum showed the highest geometric stability, followed by motor and visual cortex. Hippocampus was the least stable. But this ordering is roughly the exact inverse of the temporal stability hierarchy. Thalamus drifted the least, while striatum drifted the most. Centroid similarity in striatum was around 0.83, yet its geometric stability was 0.44. Hippocampus had a centroid similarity of 0.94, but geometric stability of only 0.19. Permutation null models confirm the drift is real and accumulates gradually across the session. This dissociation points to a fundamental difference in circuit function. Striatum continuously updates value representations and action-reward associations, shifting its baseline firing rates while maintaining a reliable relational code for downstream readout. Hippocampus, by contrast, prioritizes rapid memory formation. Its mean population state stays put, but the internal geometry reorganizes constantly to encode new experiences. More importantly, this within-session geometric reliability has direct functional consequences. We measured trial-by-trial neural behavioral coupling by correlating the L2 norm of each trial's population vector with whether the animal was correct or incorrect. Geometric stability predicted this coupling significantly, with a Spearman correlation of 0.18 and a p-value of 0.005. Centroid drift did not. Decoding accuracy did not. Neither did whitened unbiased distance metrics. The behavioral relevance of representational geometry operates on a trial-to-trial timescale, not a session-to-session one. A population can be highly decodable yet geometrically brittle, and when it is, that brittleness directly impacts how reliably the region's activity tracks behavior on individual trials. The Steinmetz data establishes that geometric stability varies across regions and predicts behavior, but it doesn't explain the circuit mechanism. For that, we turn to the olfactory system. Piriform cortex receives sparse, incomplete feed-forward input from the olfactory bulb, and it's densely interconnected with recurrent excitatory connections. This makes it a natural test case for an attractor network model. We analyzed paired recordings from the olfactory bulb and piriform cortex, including a manipulation where recurrent connections were selectively silenced using tetanus toxin light chain. The data showed a directional trend. Olfactory bulb stability was lowest, piriform cortex with silenced recurrence was intermediate, and intact piriform cortex was highest. While sample sizes are small and don't reach conventional significance, the directionality perfectly matches the prediction of a pattern completion mechanism. To formalize this, we built an excitatory-inhibitory balanced rate network. The network consists of 200 units receiving sparse feed-forward input with 70% channel dropout per trial, simulating the incomplete bulb-to-cortex projection. The dynamics are governed by a differential equation where activity evolves toward fixed points based on recurrent excitatory coupling scaled by a parameter J, balanced by fixed global inhibition. At j equals 0, the network is a purely feed-forward relay. Each trial receives a different random 30% of the stimulus. Responses vary wildly across trial splits, and geometric stability is low. As we increase j, the recurrent term pulls activity towards stimulus-specific fixed points. The network completes the full pattern from partial input, drastically reducing the dependence of the population response on the stochastic input mask. Across 10 independently seeded networks and 15 values of j, geometric stability increased monotonically. The model confirms that recurrent coupling stabilizes geometry by acting as an auto-associative attractor, making the representational dissimilarity matrix reproducible across independent observations. This is the mathematical mechanism by which recurrence increases geometric stability. It reduces trial-to-trial variability in the RDM by forcing activity into stimulus-specific fixed points, regardless of which input channels survive dropout. This dissociation between geometric and temporal stability isn't just a quirk of one dataset. It aligns with a growing body of literature, showing that neural drift unfolds orthogonally to context representations. Cells reorganize, but the population geometry for task-relevant variables is preserved. Shesha quantifies the within-session version of this phenomenon. It's not a drift measure. It's a reliability measure that operates on a timescale of minutes. And it matters because downstream computation depends on consistent relational input. If the pairwise geometry is unstable, it constrains the fidelity of information transmitted through inter-area communication subspaces, regardless of what the downstream area tries to compute. There are limitations to acknowledge. Shesha is a global metric and doesn't localize instability to specific stimulus pairs or subspaces. The olfactory circuit analysis comes from separate experiments, and the whole brain variation in geometric stability is likely dominated by factors like sensory drive strength, not just recurrence. But the core principle holds. Recurrent connectivity provides a circuit-level mechanism for stabilizing representational geometry, balancing the need for flexible, temporally structured dynamics with the requirement for reliable relational coding. Interestingly, when applied to artificial neural networks, geometric stability and transfer performance are also dissociable. Models that perform best can have the worst stability, and vice versa. Whether this reflects a fundamental principle common to biological and artificial systems remains an open question, but the parallel is highly suggestive for anyone working on continual learning or robust representation learning. Geometric stability reveals a hidden axis of representational analysis that existing frameworks simply don't capture. It's orthogonal to temporal drift, independent of decoding accuracy, and directly tied to trial-by-trial behavioral coupling. By formalizing how recurrent circuitry stabilizes pairwise distance structures through pattern completion, we gain a more complete picture of how the brain maintains reliable representations in the face of inherent noise. If you're interested in the mathematical details, the full-rate network model, or the open-source Python package for computing Shesha, everything is available in the repository linked in the description. The code is fully reproducible, and the datasets are publicly archived. Understanding how neural populations balance stability and flexibility is one of the most active frontiers in computational neuroscience and AI. I highly recommend diving into the original papers and the accompanying codebase to explore the methods yourself. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.